Do you find it hard to read all the books you want in a month? Do you find those awesome booktubers with high read counts and wrap-up videos intimidating? Hi, my name's Bea, and I'm here to make you feel better about the number of books you've read, because it's almost certainly more than I have. Welcome to my channel, Mama Needs to Read Some Romance, but probably not enough to warrant a wrap-up video. But we're here, let's do it. I read, get ready, 10 whole books this month. I have these three little people, they're in my house, they're always needing things. I'm basically reading in between wiping things. I'm wiping surfaces in the house. I'm wiping various parts of children. I just wipe all day, just different things. And fold. There's a lot of folding and washing and wiping. Just all the time. But in between there's reading. Most of this, audiobooks. I count it. I'm still enjoying the stories. I can still talk about them, so hopefully that's okay with you. Let's get to it. If it helps, we'll pretend this is my top 10 instead of my only 10. Coming in at number 10, I have The Matchmakers by Carolyn Brown. It's an Audible original, part of Audible Plus, so it is free. It's only 2 hours long if you're interested in a rom-com that is short and fun. I gave it about 2.5 stars. I think I've updated my rating a little bit. It's a second chance romance, and I just watched a video that Ava did over at Ava's Romance Books. Go check out her channel. She's great. But she was talking about how some people don't like second chance romances, and one of the reasons that I don't like second chance romances is because sometimes the reason that the couple broke up in the first place is a little shallow, and in this case that's the deal. This couple, basically, it reminds me of every Hallmark movie I've ever seen where it's just he works too much or he looks at his phone too often. So that was kind of the deal. But I mean, when you have a 2-hour book, you're not really going to be able to cover a lot of ground. And that's an easy, like, getting back together story, obviously. This book takes place on a cruise ship. We follow 3 golden year ladies and a gentleman who, they just move from cruise ship to cruise ship. They don't live anywhere. That's just what they've decided to do with their retirement years. And their favorite hobby is setting up couples on cruises, and they pick their guy and their girl at the beginning of every cruise. And this cruise in particular, they've chosen a couple that turns out to have been married, and they're currently separated, but they're willing to work things out. I enjoyed the cruise ship element. It made me remember my days when I used to go on a cruise. I miss those days. Anyway, but yeah, I did enjoy it, but there wasn't a lot of meat to it. There are some really nice sentiments that I thought about like weeks later that some of the old people pass on to the younger people. But otherwise, it was good, but you know, nothing earth-shattering. Coming in at number 9, the Seduction series 1B by Eloisa James. This is technically a Kindle Vella, but it is like a book. It's like a novella. Again, very similar to the other book that I just mentioned in that it was short, so there wasn't a lot of meat to it. I felt like a lot of the characters were sort of two-dimensional, but I really enjoyed the fact that Bea is a curvy girl, and she had 2 suitors there for a little while. There is some bullying, there is some fat shaming, but Bea does come out victorious, and she gets her man. There's some good love in this. I loved the author's notes at the end of each episode because I learned something from Eloisa James about how she does her writing process, as well as what things were like back then. Some history lessons too. So it was interesting. I would give it a 2.5. Coming in at number 8, The Turncoats Widow by Mally Becker. I thought this was a historical romance because I looked up historical romance, and this is what I found because I wanted something that would be good for the 4th of July. I don't know why, but I did. And it's a historical mystery, really, that has romance elements. If there's a person that you know that really enjoys historical fiction, historical mysteries, this is absolutely a book I would recommend to them. It was fascinating. I learned a lot about America in the early years, right after the Declaration of Independence, things I did not know. It was really cool to meet George Washington and Alexander Hamilton. The chemistry between the 2 leads was on point, but it was a little grittier than I tend to like, at least for right now. I'm more into like the fluffiest stuff. But it's about the American Revolution and the early years of America. So it is going to be gritty, but it was good. But again, there wasn't quite as much romance for me. So I'm going to say this was 3 stars. Coming in at number 7, it's The Standin by Lily Chu. Speaking of Alexander Hamilton, Philippa Sue, she is the narrator of this book, and she plays Lin-Manuel Miranda's wife Alexander Hamilton's wife, in the original cast version of Hamilton, which was really cool to hear her voice. I learned from Jessin over at Jessin Reads Romance that there is a difference between women's fiction and romance. I kind of thought they were the same thing, but with romance book, the romance is the central plot, and it has to have a happily ever after, and romance is going to be integral to the ending, whereas with women's fiction, there can be romance in there, but it's primarily about the journey of the woman. This is the Standin. I would have called it a rom-com and left it at that. But yeah, this is women's fiction. There is a romance element. She gets to fall in love with the most sought-after Chinese actor in the world. He is super hot. It was really fun because she gets to be the stand-in of the most famous Chinese actress in the world. And so you get to see the glamorous life of a Chinese actress. But it's really cool. There was a lot of character development. The lead, she has a really hard time in the beginning, but she goes through a lot of growth and she really comes out victorious. It was a great ending. There were a couple twists and turns I did not expect. I highly recommend it. I thought it was really fun. Coming in at number 6, Secrets of a Summer Night by Lisa Kleypas. It's the first book in the Wallflower series, which I am reading for my summer with Lisa Kleypas. And Simon and Annabelle are both good characters, but I didn't find them as compelling as the rest of the characters in the Wallflower series, maybe in part because the prologue is missing from the audiobook version, which was published in 2021. The prologue is kind of integral to the plot, I feel, and I'll be discussing this more in my Wallflowers wrap up in a couple of weeks. But yeah, I mean, it was a good story. I loved meeting the Wallflowers. They help one another find men because they are just not very sought after ladies. Of the 4 gals, the first one is Annabelle, who they try to set up, and she winds up falling for a man who she didn't really expect. I gave it 4 stars, and if you like Lisa Kleypas and you like the Wallflowers, you've got to start with this one. Actually, you've got to start with another one that I'm going to talk about in a minute. I'll explain. Coming in at number 5, It Happened One Autumn, also by Lisa Kleypas. This is book 2 of the Wallflower series. I love Marcus, especially the 2021 audiobook version of Marcus over the print version from 2004 of Marcus, which I explain in this video, which I can't believe some of the rewrites they did. But I'm not a huge Lillian fan, who is our heroine in this story, but she really does come out on top. I was rooting for her throughout. I love checking back in with some of the characters from, again, The Magic, as well as Secrets of a Summer Night. There were some great romantic elements to this story. It was beautiful historical romance. Lisa Kleypas always does a great job, but it wasn't like my favorite. So 4 stars. Coming in at number 4 is Seatmate by Cara Bastone. It's another shorter one. It's like 5 hours long and it's in real time. It's like a radio show with a huge cast of characters, like actual people, different human beings that are narrating different parts. There are sound effects, and from I would say the first minute I was completely hooked on these 2 main characters and their love story. You really buy that they're going to fall in love with one another, and you can't wait to see what's going to happen. A lot of exciting things do happen. It doesn't just become this bus ride from Boston to New York City. There's a whole lot of other things that happen. It did lag a little bit there when they were getting to know each other in the middle for me, but otherwise I found this extremely engaging, compelling. The male narrator is very hot, I thought, and I had a really good time, and I'm really looking forward to trying out some more of this author's work, also on Audible Plus. I gave this book 4.5. Okay, this is where it gets really hard. My top 3, coming in at number 3, Radiance by Grace Draven. It's a 5-star for me. I loved it. I was swept away to another world. The platonic love that these 2 characters have, they're so humble, they're so kind, they are on one another's team from the beginning, and that was so refreshing to me because so often in these books there's so much pride, but in this book they were always in it together, and then watching their love blossom was just so perfect. I loved it. There wasn't too much politics, there wasn't too much history, I didn't have to think too hard, so that was nice. There was a little bit of a scary ending, which is why it wasn't maybe my number 1, because I don't know that I love scary, but I'm still going to read the entire series. In fact, I have a plan in a video that I have linked above that I'm going to finish the rest of this series by the end of the year. So yeah, I liked it that much that I'm going to get through the scary stuff to see these characters again and see this world. The author was great and the narrator was great. I loved it. Coming in at number 2, Devil in Winter. I haven't quite finished it, but I've already read it 3 times. I'm rereading it right now for my Summer with Lisa Kleypas. Don't judge me, okay? I needed 10 books. I can have a 1-digit breakdown for June. It's gotta be at least 2 digits. This book has the most delicious hero you're ever gonna meet. The heroine is strong and resilient. I love her so much. And it also introduces Cam Rohan, which, oh my gosh, I love him. And thankfully he is heavily in the Hathaway series, which is coming up the next series that I'm gonna be working on in July. I loved everything about this book. It's steamy, it's passionate, there's quite a redemption story, and yeah, I mean, what more can be said? What more do you want? It's historical romance at its finest. 5 stars. Coming in at number 1 for me, again, the magic. Again, always. Lisa Kleypas, oh my gosh. I love this book so much. I've read it like 5 times and it just keeps getting better every single time. And I'm sure I'm gonna read it again. It's the prequel to the Wallflower series and I feel like it should be the first book. I'm afraid people wouldn't read it because it's a prequel. That makes me so sad. You have to read it. You have to read it. Even if you don't read the Wallflower series, read this book. It follows McKenna and Aileen. It's a second chance romance. They are in love as teenagers and then something happens. It's like Atonement. So much better ending. And there's another couple as well and they have lots of love and they're very sweet. But there's a lot of angst, which I don't generally like. And the fact that I can say that I like this, that should say something because I tend to veer away from angst. So you know the payout's pretty big if I'm still dealing with angst and loving this book as much as I do. It's just the passion that they have for one another is so incredible. I mean, they feel real to me. These characters feel real, and some of the scenes I just felt like they could have materialized right in front of me, which would have been awkward. So glad they didn't. That's my top 10, aka my only 10 for the month of June. I can't wait for July. I'm gonna try a TBR too, which we'll see how that goes. I don't know that I should even try, but I'm going to. Maybe I'll read 11 books in July. I'm gonna try to keep the bar awfully low. I hope you're doing well. Thanks for hanging out with me this long. Take care and bye.